All right, what's going on, everybody? So I want to speak a little bit about the truth movement and what's really going on that you have to be aware of as a Christian and as one that is trying yourself to be able to figure out everything and make sense of the world. And so if you haven't been living under a rock, you know that a lot of people are trying to expose, to bring to light and tell people this is what the truth is. This is what's going on that's hidden in the world. This is not a conspiracy theory. These things are what people need to act on and pray over and to be able to do something about it so that we don't have our next generation, we don't have ourselves, we don't have all of our livelihoods, our freedoms be taken away, and we can bring justice to all the things that have plagued us for such a long time. And so this touches on all different topics. And so these words, disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy theory, alt-right, extremists, QAnon, you name it. There are all these terms that are being thrown around. And if you do any amount of research and reading, you can see that there are people that are extremely on one end. There are other people that are extremely on the other end. And you have people fighting. You have people fighting within, if you want to call them the conservatives or the right, you have people fighting within the liberals and the left or whatever it is, right? But the problem becomes where a lot of people, because they're so distant from it, right? They're so distant from any topic. You can take Christianity as an example. You could take all the truth movements that are happening right now. You can take any of these things. And if you're so distant from it and you encounter one thing that is off, one thing that you don't agree with, one thing that happens to not be true, then you disregard everything entirely. And so what you have to realize is that the devil in this information war that we live in, and I've talked about the information war for a long time, it's trying to indoctrinate you. It's trying to give you propaganda to believe something, to lean towards a certain side, to make you feel angry and upset and blah, blah, blah. It seeks to divide you. These things, it's not a joke. This is not some modern, day warfare with guns and death and these things. Yeah, it's happening in some parts of the earth. But for the most part, with social media, with news, and with all these different things, the devil is playing on a playground for which he's using psychological warfare, information warfare to his advantage. And what he's doing now is he's injecting himself into certain movements, whether it's a truth movement, whether it's an overall good movement like the gospel, Christian movements, things like that, so that he can seek to undermine the credibility of that through shills, through campaigns that allow you to doubt and cast doubt on certain things. And so you have to be aware of that. It happens everywhere. So I can think about all the things that are happening with the truth movement and how people are anchoring off of. And recently there was this snake venom, in the water thing. You have, for the longest time, right, people thinking that there's mass tribunals in the background and people are, having these fake people with these, plastic surgery or even these masks on, and you have people that are believing in the Nazera stuff. You have people believing in flat earth. You have people believing in all sorts of things, right, that are in some sense kooky or loony, right? But the overall movement of exposure, the overall movement of saying that there is a cabal, there is some sort of sinister activity, there is these crimes against humanities, all these different things that are happening, right, that are there, that are being grouped up into these other crazy things, right? And again, I'm not speaking for every single one. You have to do your research and your due diligence. But, all these different aliens or crazy things like that, they're all being lumped into this alt-right or this truth movement thing. And it's undermining the overall movement of what is genuinely a good movement in terms of exposing the actual truth. The same goes for anybody that's in Christianity. As a Christian, you cringe when you have people that think they're Christians, that think they're speaking on behalf of other people, only to realize that they have their own extremist views, they have their own ideologies that are false, that are not biblical. They are false teachings, false doctrine, whatever it is, and they're all grouped up. To anybody that looks at it and says, man, I don't know anything about Christianity, but I heard about that pastor, I heard about those, sex trafficking, child molesting pedophiles. I heard about that one megachurch that went through that scandal. I heard about this ideology. I heard about the flaws that people supposedly say exist in that death and resurrection of Christ. I've heard about these things, and because they're so distant from it, they can't help but to group it all together, and then in their coping mechanism to say, oh, I guess none of that is something that I believe in. I'm just going to reject everything, right? God is not real. Jesus is not real because I had a bad experience with one or two things that happened to be not good or false, or they were a bad example of being a Christian. It happens all the time. And so because of this causation effect and this fallacy, this logical fallacy, it's appealing to people's lack of awareness and understanding in a topic, and because they're so far away from it, right? And I'm using Christianity as an example because many of you can agree to that, right? You've seen that happen time and time again with new Christians, with people that are in different camps, and they can't come to a conclusion about some things. The same is happening in the truth movement. The truth movement is there to really expose what's going on, but in the midst of that, right, Satan and many black hats or shills or whatever you want to call it, they've infiltrated Telegram, they've infiltrated YouTube channels, they've infiltrated all these people, and then it becomes this crazy echo chamber of people jumping on and saying, oh, I like this guy and I believe this thing, so I guess I need to believe that thing as well. I need to believe in the existence of whatever that theology or the ideology is, right? And so that's why there's this crazy, you have to be really discerning in this time. I've said before, you have to be discerning. You have to have a relationship with the Lord. You have to have the Holy Spirit guiding you. You can't have somebody because he was good 9 out of 10 times. You can't have somebody who is being propped up as being the new, expert on something, tell you something, and because there's so much mainstream coverage of that, or alternative coverage of that, you jump on that and say, oh, I guess that's right. So that's why right now, guys, Satan and the people, whether they're there, and this is happening in many areas of financial realm. If I think about the Federal Reserve and the exposure of the Occupy Wall Street, led by the Redditors, right, GameStop and AMC and all these different things that are happening. There's movements in all these areas to expose the truth that's happening in Hollywood. You see it on late night talk show hosts and all these people that are trying to discredit and jump on one or two things that are cuckoo, flat earth being one, or many, many others. And then they say, oh, look at all of them. Look at all of the alt-right guys. Look at all of the conservatives. Look at all of the QAnon guys. Look at all of the Trump supporters. Look at all of these whack Christians. And they group it. And it's easy to jump on that narrative and present that as being cuckoo. And then it discredits everything. The same goes for Christianity, guys. No wonder people are hating Christians. No wonder God is being rejected, because a lot of people, they reverse the causation. God doesn't exist, Jesus doesn't exist because of a couple of people that made them out to be foolish, or there's some holes in the theology. They couldn't explain for themselves what the meaning of the gospel is and all these different things. So then they reverse the causation. And just because somebody can't defend or doesn't know fully a topic doesn't necessarily mean that God doesn't exist. That doesn't necessarily mean that Jesus doesn't exist. Same goes for the truth. Just because people can't prove or give you all of the information doesn't mean that there wasn't election fraud, that there wasn't child pedophilia and pornography, that there isn't this crimes against humanity, that there isn't a global one world order that is trying to indoctrinate, to enslave, to do these different things, right? And so because these movements are being lumped up and grouped together, it's hard for the normal person. It's hard for even those that have been following and trying to push the truth movement for a long time to have credibility, because these people, and Satan especially, they're seeking to undermine this movement. They're seeking to undermine the truth. They're seeking to undermine Christianity. They're seeking to undermine all of the exposure of what's going on. And so that's why I'm saying you have to be very cautious in this time. It's hurtful for many people to say, oh man, that guy, In name, he's Christian. In name, he's a Trump supporter. In name, he is XYZ. And they're making the movement look bad. They're making the group look bad because they were caught up in some other infiltrated movement or doctrine that isn't necessarily right. And so that's why right now you really have to take it case by case. You really have to see it in a discerning fashion. And you can't stereotype. You can't group and lump up together. You can't look at something and say, aha, because this one guy or this one movement, this one group is saying this, that means I'm going to cancel all of that. So that's why more than ever, it requires deep discernment to get through this time, to really be able to drive your own points, your own viewpoints, and what the truth is. So be very cautious what you hear. And again, I've said before, you have to let the dust settle. You can't just anchor yourself on something or somebody just because you heard it and you read a couple of articles and you think, oh, that's true. You have to really be discerning in this time. Thank goodness I didn't push a lot of other movements or ideologies or thoughts. I'm waiting to see, man, is it panning out? Man, is there substance behind it? Man, are there other things, evidence that will come to light, right? So again, guys, it's tough, but this is what the truth movement is right now. And the truth is, you have to be very cautious, case by case. Just like how people, good pastors, they will tell you, be very careful with how you receive anything, even at the pulpit. Pray about it. Go to the Lord about it. You can't just eat up things just because you trust somebody. You have to look at the truth for what it is, not the person behind it, not the way somebody packages it together, not the way that, whatever it is that is trying to persuade you, but rather look at the truth itself. And I've said this about Putin, I've said this about Russia, I've said this about election fraud, I've said this about Trump, I've said this about COVID, about vaccines, and all these different things. Just because you got somebody with a title, with an authority, with whatever it is, rational reasoning, just because they're telling you something doesn't mean it's right? So you have to look at the truth for what it is. You can't be looking at groups, summaries, people you trust, and all these different things. Look at the truth for what it is and be very cautious for shills, for people that are undermining the movement and to discredit it, because it's very, very tough right now, guys, to push anything, to have a viewpoint on anything, because it's getting people frustrated, upset, they're closed off, and they don't want to learn anymore because there's such a disorientedness, such a chaos, such a cloud, a foggy cloud of all of this information that people can't sort through and filter through. So again, guys, we don't, have all the time to look through everything. I know that, but we have to really get into a place for which we have a good relationship that we can seek and lean on Him for everything. So God bless you guys. Love you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.